is Sylvia Plath? Those who have heard the name would probably assume she was that one depressing female poet who killed herself after her husband cheated on her, but they probably wouldn't be able to name a single one of her poems or stories. This is because the media and storytelling of her life has left the conclusion that she was just a compilation of depressing words. Even John Green states in his Crash Course video,
"Today we're going to talk about the poetry of Sylvia Plath." Mr. Green, ugh, I heard she's like the patron saint of sad teenage girls.
This is a bit extreme, but one might think this is not too unfounded when they hear her reading out of this excerpt of her poem, Lady Lazarus.
Dying is an art, like everything else. I do it exceptionally well. I do it so it feels like hell. I do it so it feels real. I guess you could say I've a call.
But truly, who is Sylvia Plath? Sylvia Plath was born on October 27, 1932 in Boston, Massachusetts. In 1940, when Plath was 8 years old, her father died as a result of complications from diabetes. He had been a strict father, and both his authoritarian attitudes and his death left her feeling betrayed and drastically defined her relationships and her poems, most notably in her infamous poem, Daddy. Sylvia Plath was a gifted student who had won numerous awards and had published stories and poetry in national magazines while still in her teens. She attended Smith College on a scholarship and continued to excel. However, she began to experience severe depression in her undergraduate years, and in 1953, at the age of 19, attempted to commit suicide by swallowing sleeping pills. She survived the attempt, and upon returning to Smith College, she continued to succeed, graduating as one of the top in her class. She then won a scholarship to Cambridge, England, on a Fulbright scholarship, where, in early 1956, she met the brilliant English poet Ted Hughes. They began a passionate romance, married in 1956, had 2 children, and then Sylvia was left alone and even more depressed after finding that her husband had been having an affair with another woman. During her time as a poet, during her time with Ted, she had trouble finding a voice, inspiration, though she had indeed successfully published numerous poems and stories. However, now, suffering from a deep depression, Plath wrote in an intense burst of poetic frenzy most of the poems that would comprise her most famous book, Ariel, then publishing a semi-autobiographical novel, The Bell Jar, in 1963. On February 11th, 1963, at the age of 30, Plath placed her head in a gas oven after sealing the rooms between herself and her children, inhaling gas from the oven and committing suicide. Now, there have been many showcases and references to Plath made by the media in her time and recently, and there was indeed a film based on her life featured to the public in 2003 titled Sylvia, starring Gwyneth Paltrow as Sylvia Plath and Daniel Craig as Ted Hughes. Like most other media, there was an extreme emphasis on their romance and her depression. A good friend of Sylvia, Elizabeth Sigmund, had advised the makers of Sylvia, but she says Paltrow's rendition of Sylvia is not the fun, humorous woman that she knew. Sigmund says, "There were a number of things which the writer just didn't take on board, which is how happy Ted and Sylvia were, and that they'd had a huge circle of friends. This was all left out. When I actually saw the film, I was very disappointed. In this film, Sylvia was portrayed as a constant depressive. The film is unwittingly dark. When they lived in Devon, there was so much laughter and fun. The film enhances the idea that Sylvia was a permanent depressive and a possessive person, which just isn't true." Though true that the life of Sylvia Plath was tragic, there was still humanity in it that she experienced, happiness and humor as well. She was more than just her relationship with Ted and more than her depression and suicide. She's a beacon of strength for women, showing that women are capable of creative and intelligent masterpieces, academic succession, independence, and that a mental illness may be a part of one's life, but it doesn't define them. She was the creator of Ariel, the Colossus, and stories such as The Bell Jar and so many works. She was a mother, a friend, and a human being with a soul that didn't hide, but spoke out. Sylvia is one of the many that have been simply regarded as depressed and depressing. but with writing history and looking past movies, one can see she was a pioneer for women, poets, and people everywhere.